Hello guys, I'm Shifan. In this video, I'll be going through the expected essay questions for the A-Level Biology exams 2025 based on Unit 2 Chemical and Cellular Basis of Life. So if you haven't gone through my previous video, which I made on expected essay questions on Unit 5, please go through that too. In this video, I'll be talking about all the predicted essays we can get based on what we have got in the last 5 years. So I'll be going through all the past papers from 2019 to 2024 and we'll see what they gave on Unit 2 in those papers and let's see what we can expect this year. So let's go through the video. First, I'll start with the 2019 paper. So in 2019, they asked to briefly describe the characteristics of enzymes. So the whole question was about enzymes and the second part was about how pH and temperature affect enzymes. And the other part was about the competitive and non-competitive inhibitors in enzymatic reactions. So we know they are not going to ask about it. So because they have already given it, this time you can expect the questions on the regulation mechanism of enzymatic activity, such as the allosteric activation and inhibition, cooperativity, and feedback inhibition. So please go through these areas in enzymes because there's a very high possibility that they might ask you a question based on this. So I'll write it down. If you want, take a note of it. So these are potential essay questions for this year's exam. So go through the feedback inhibition of enzymes, the cooperativity and allosteric activation and inhibition. Now let's go through the 2020 paper. So in 2020, they asked a question based on aerobic respiration. So there's a very low possibility that you might get a question on aerobic respiration, but anyways, go through aerobic respiration too. But there's a very high possibility that you might get a question based on anaerobic respiration. So when it comes to anaerobic respiration, we know there are two types: ethyl alcohol fermentation and lactic acid fermentation. So when it comes to an essay, they will probably ask about both of the types of fermentation. So go through that too. So I'll write it down. So these are potential essay questions that you might get when it comes to respiration. So go through these ones too. So now let's take a look at the 2021 paper. So in 2021, they asked a question about the nucleotides and how nucleotides form the backbone of the DNA. And also another question based on the structure of the DNA molecule. So this year, if they are asking a question based on nucleotides, they might ask about the nucleotides that are found outside the nucleic acids. Sorry, outside the nucleus. So these include the ATP, the NAD plus, NADH, and the FAD. So when it comes to ATP, they might ask you a separate question, so separate essay on ATP. Then you have to write about the structure of the ATP, how it is produced, about photophosphorylation, substrate phosphorylation, and oxidative phosphorylation. All these things include in the essay. And also how ATP is used as heat energy, light energy, and all the other types of energy. So sometimes they might ask you a separate essay on ATP, but other than that, they might ask you to explain all the other nucleic acids found outside the nucleus. So I'll write it down too. So those include the ATP, NAD plus, which is involved in the aerobic respiration. So I have to write about it when they ask about it. Then NADH on in photosynthesis and FAD. So another question is based on they might try to write an essay on ATP. So that's another potential essay question. So add all the points I told earlier for if they ask a question on this. Okay, let's go through the 2022 paper now. So in 2022, they asked to describe the nuclear division where chromosome number is reduced during meiosis. So this year there's a very low possibility that they might ask you about meiosis, but there's a very high possibility that they might ask you about mitosis. because they haven't asked about mitosis. And also remember, if they ask about, they might ask about plant mitosis or animal mitosis. And I hope you guys remember the differences in plant and animal mitosis. In animal mitosis, cleavage is found, but in plants, cell plate is formed. And another difference is in animals, spindle apparatus is formed using centrosomes, but in plants there is no centrosomes, and the chromosomes are arranged using the microtubules in plants. So remember the differences they might ask you based on plant or animal mitosis. So I'll write it down. So question based on, let's say, on mitosis based on plants, animals, and also another potential essay question that you guys might get is based on tumor cells and goals. So we know tumor cells, benign tumor, malignant tumor, metastasis. So we have to write about all those. So another possible essay question is on tumor cells and goals, which is uncontrollable mitotic division in plants. So go through this part too, your high importance to it. Okay, guys, let's go through the 2023 paper. So in 2023, they asked to describe the linear electron flow that takes place in the chloroplast during the light reaction of photosynthesis, and the B part was briefly describe the reasons for high efficiency of photosynthesis in C4 plants. So this year, you can expect a question on Calvin cycle because they haven't asked a question on Calvin cycle, right? So that's a possibility. But another thing to understand is that when I say essay on Calvin cycle, they might ask it differently. They won't bluntly say write an essay on Calvin cycle, but they might say explain how Calvin cycle is involved in photosynthesis, a question like that. But just go through Calvin cycle. Like even if they ask a question in different ways, the answer is got to be the same, right? So the another potential essay is based on photorespiration. So you might have to explain everything about photorespiration. And they might also ask about C4 pathway of photosynthesis. How C4 pathway is done in photosynthesis. So these three are potential essay questions based on photosynthesis and the C4 pathway. Okay, now let's go through the 2024 paper. So in 2024, they asked to describe the transcription process in polypeptide synthesis of eukaryotes. And on B part, they asked to explain the structure of the plasma membrane of living cell. So we know this year they are not going to ask this question. But in cell biology, they might ask you to compare eukaryotic and prokaryotic cell. And they haven't asked that question. So that's a possible essay question. And another possible essay question is they might ask you to describe the structure and function of the cytoskeleton, cell junction, and maybe the cell wall. These are essay questions that they haven't asked yet. So be prepared for that too. So based on the structure and function, the cytoskeleton, and junction, cell wall, cell wall. So these are possible essay questions on when it comes to cell biology. But also another thing I wanted to say is when it comes to cell biology, draw all the structures. I know you guys have another 10 to 20 days more for the exam, but this is going to be really helpful. Draw all the structures, and while drawing structures, remember their functions and everything about that specific structure. So in that way, you can do an essay based on this really well. So that's it for today. I'll meet you guys with another video on the expected questions on another unit. So until then, see you, take care, and study well.